Michigan. As a registered nurse for well over 30 years, Cheryl currently works in the ICU at Ascension Providence Hospital, Rochester, and is a member of OPEIU Local 40. Everybody, let's welcome Cheryl up to the stage.
Hi everyone. As these young ladies said, there truly is a lot of strong black women here. And I want you to give each and every one of them a round of applause once again. But I'm here to tell you that oftentimes, us black women, we need our crowns fixed ourselves. We need someone to fix our crowns. And when we stand in healthcare, oftentimes there is, I apologize for that, oftentimes there is implicit bias that impacts the care that we receive. And those and that bias by various healthcare professionals certainly impact the care that we receive each and every day. Implicit bias is the thoughts and feelings that are subconscious, that we're not aware of, that certainly impacts how you treat other people. And many healthcare professionals are subject to that. Implicit bias is often very subtle. For example, one young lady just told me the other day that she went to the emergency room. And this was a black sister. She went to the emergency room and she with a severe abdominal pain. And yet she never received any pain medication. And that happens quite often. That is quite a common occurrence when it comes to the care of black women. A recent study indicated that they did a systematic study on why black patients do not receive pain medication. And the study found that many of the physicians that care for these particular patients had certain biases or about the patients that they cared for. Some of the biases that were identified is that black women have tougher skin, and so they don't necessarily need as much pain medication, or that the nerve endings in their bodies are not as sensitive, so they don't need pain medication. These are the kinds of unconscious biases that impact the care that we receive each and every day. Another study identified that black women die of childbirth and pregnancy 3 to 4 times more than white women. And why do you think that is? It's the unconscious biases that many of the healthcare professionals have that they don't necessarily feel the need to treat. Another study identified that many black women suffer from heart conditions and do not get treated as white patients do with thrombolytics. And those are the unconscious biases that impacts each and every one of us each and every day. And so how do we get someone to fix our crowns? We have to be able to dialogue with the care providers each and every day with regards to how they treat each and every one of us as black women. I recently took care of, as was indicated, I work in the intensive care unit at one of our local hospitals. And one thing that I noticed is that many of the patients that are on ventilators who need care, and whether they need to get a bath and most nurses provide that kind of service. However, when it comes to black women, oftentimes you find that they never even get their hair combed, but you see white women do. Those are the unconscious biases that truly impact the care that we receive each and every day. And most people don't even know why they have these unconscious biases. that impacts the care that we receive. Another study found that the greater a doctor was more pro-white, had more pro-white implicit biases, the less likely they were to treat black women. We know that there are certain racial biases, that these racial biases are often steeped in history, and history of structural and institutional racism that we are still fighting each and every day. A 2016 study in the Journal of Clinical Oncology found that black women are less likely than white women to undergo genetic testing, in large part because physicians are less likely to recommend it to them. And certainly that impacts our morbidity and mortality. Oftentimes, unconscious bias can be identified as approaching patients in a condescending manner, tone that decreases the likelihood of black women feeling heard. Another way in which there's an unconscious bias is in the performance of routine drug tests for certain patients, but not for others. And this can even be worse for when you take into account intersectionality. For example, for transgender women of color, not being identified as the gender that they identify with. When healthcare professionals don't do that, it impacts transgender women mentally, emotionally, and as a result, they don't feel like they can talk to their healthcare providers. So what do you do about these unconscious biases? The most important thing is to be able to speak up. Oftentimes, people are unable to do so while they're in the healthcare setting, but it's important for you to do that and to be an advocate for each other when you're unable to do that. Call the hospitals and talk to the CEOs of those particular organizations and let them know what your experience was like. It's extremely important for you to do that and to advocate on behalf of your sisters in that regard. So you can also talk to your legislators. As we know, there's only 5% black physicians in our country, and although African Americans make up 13% of our population. Certainly, we can have more of our nurse practitioners advocate for nurse practitioners to be able to practice within the full scope of their practice. There's significantly more African American women who are nurse practitioners, but because of the politics and physicians, the strong American Medical Association, most nurse practitioners